I am not diabetic, but I wore a CGM for 30 days, and the first spike came from a healthy breakfast I trusted. The internet calls this biofeedback, but your body calls it chemistry, and chemistry does not care about your vibe. This sensor reads glucose and interstitial fluid, not blood. So there's a delay important detail number one before we overreact. A CGM can lag behind blood by minutes. So the line is a story of trends, not a courtroom verdict. Today we start baseline, no dieting heroics, just eating normally and letting the sensor reveal patterns I can't feel. And there it is, glucose climbs fast, so the real question becomes why this meal hits me harder than I expected. Meet insulin, the key that moves glucose into cells. Spikes are not evil, but repeated big spikes change the whole day. In 20 minutes, you will know what spikes you, what smooths you, how stress raises glucose, and where CGM data can mislead. Rule 1. CGM is not a morality meter. It is a thermometer. Use it to learn, not to shame yourself into weird eating. We will track peaks, duration, and variability because the damage, when it happens, usually comes from patterns, not one dessert. Everyone asks, which food is bad? But the better question is, which combination and timing makes my curve calm? Quick safety note. CGM can't diagnose diabetes here. If symptoms or labs worry you, get real testing with clinician. Week 1 is baseline, same routine, honest logging so later changes actually mean something instead of random noise. Also real life. Adhesives itch, sensors drift, and data drops, so perfection is not the goal. Interpretation is. Now, let us build the timeline. What happens in the first hour after eating, and why your curve is a delayed movie. After you eat, glucose rises, insulin responds, and the sensor shows it later, so timing matters when you compare foods. Carbs break down, glucose enters circulation, and your body decides, burn it in muscle, store as glycogen, or stash it as fat. Muscle is the glucose sink movement recruits glut for, letting glucose enter with less insulin, which is why walks are so powerful. The liver buffers glucose by storing glycogen, then releasing it later. Stress can force releases even when you did not eat. A tall spike is not the only issue. Long duration matters too, because insulin stays elevated longer and hunger can rebound harder. Baseline asks simple questions: which meal spikes most, how long it lasts, and what my glucose does while I sleep. Night data is sneaky late meals, alcohol, and poor sleep can keep glucose slightly elevated, even without dramatic spikes. Caffeine can raise stress hormones and change glucose response, so we log it because otherwise you blame oatmeal for your espresso. CGM teaches a hard lesson. Identical carb grams can behave differently depending on fiber, fat, protein, and what you ate before. To learn anything, you must tag meals movement and stress, otherwise the curve is just a pretty squiggle with no explanation. Week 1 rule: do not optimize yet. We observe first, because biology is a liar when you change 10 variables at once. My first surprise was a smoothie, same ingredients as a bowl, but liquid calories hit faster and satiety arrives later. Liquids can bypass chewing and fullness signals, so you drink healthy and still crave more. Your CGM often shows a cost. Control room baseline, variability moderate, biggest peaks after liquid carbs, and sleep nights show gentle elevation after late dinners. Now the conflict. Food is not the only driver. Stress can raise glucose without a bite, and that is where people misread CGM. Same breakfast, new stress, my glucose climbs anyway, because hormones can push glucose out of the liver like emergency fuel. Cortisol is not evil, it is a survival manager, yet chronic activation can keep glucose higher and cravings louder than they should be. Acute stress releases epinephrine too, raising glucose quickly. Your CGM might show as a spike that looks like food. This is why people blame broccoli, because the curve rises after lunch, but the real trigger was the stressful call at 12:10. When you align timestamps, the story becomes obvious. Stress event first, glucose rise second, food third, timing exposes cause. Remember the lag, the sensor reports later. So you must interpret sequence carefully, or you will fix the wrong thing. Big spikes can be followed by sharper drops, normal physiology, but that swing can trigger hunger and snack panic, even in healthy people. If you feel shaky often, do not diagnose yourself from CGM alone. Confirm with medical testing symptoms deserve proper evaluation. I tested a healthy cereal. My peak was higher than eggs because processing and low protein make absorption fast and satiety weak. Fiber slows gastric emptying and absorption, acting like a speed limiter. Same carbs, different delivery rate, different insulin demand. Dessert after a balanced meal often spikes less than dessert alone because mixed meals slow absorption and reduce the size of the wave. Food order matters. Protein and fiber first. Carbs last and reduce peak simple behavior. Big payoff, especially for insulin resistance. Then I discovered the cheat code. A short walk after meals, less than a TV episode, can flatten peaks quickly. Movement recruits muscle uptake. It is like opening extra doors so glucose has somewhere to go, reducing insulin needs and swing amplitude. After poor sleep, the same breakfast spike, more sleep loss raises stress hormones and worsens insulin sensitivity, making meals hit harder. Sleep loss shifts appetite hormones ghrelin louder, satiety quieter, so you are not just hungrier, you are biologically primed to overeat. Late meals can keep glucose slightly elevated into sleep. That does not mean disease, but it reduces overnight metabolic quiet time. Alcohol complicates everything. Sometimes it lowers glucose initially, then disrupts sleep and rebounds later. So your curve can look misleading. Afternoon caffeine can increase stress response and reduce sleep quality, which then worsens next day glucose control, a delayed boomerang effect. Week 1 conclusion. My biggest drivers were liquid carbs, stress spikes, and sleep debt. So week 2 is controlled experiments. Week 2 is food trials, same calories, different form liquid versus solid, carb alone versus paired, and meal timing versus late snacks. I keep portions consistent and repeat meals because one data point is gossip. Repeated patterns are evidence your body can trust. Liquid carbs spiked faster and higher for me, while solid food rose slower chewing and fiber act like natural brakes. The smoothie left me hungry sooner, which matters because cravings are behavior. The best curve is the one that prevents second snacks. Pairing carbs with protein or fat reduce peak, and prolonged fullness simple pairing often beats complicated ingredient swapping. Fiber and protein first can reduce glycemic peak, likely through slower gastric emptying and slower carbohydrate absorption. Small ritual, big effect. I learned to watch time, the peak and duration, not just the highest number, because long plateaus keep insulin working over time. Processing changes speed. Refined carbs hit quickly, while intact grains rise slower. The sensor translates food structure into curve shape. Restaurant meals often spiked longer, not always higher hidden fats, and larger portions slow digestion, stretching glucose exposure for hours. Portion is a lever. Smaller portions reduce peak and duration. No demonizing food, just controlling dose like any responsible experiment. Same snack late at night lingered longer, likely due to circadian insulin sensitivity, and reduced movement timing changes physiology quietly. Post-meal walking consistently flattened my curve more than swapping one healthy carb for another. Movement is a universal stabilizer. Strength training days showed better tolerance. Muscle becomes a larger glucose sink. So identical meals created smaller peaks and quicker recovery. Stress changed food response. Same lunch, higher curve because cortisol raises hepatic glucose output and reduces insulin sensitivity in real time. 1 minute of breathing before eating slightly improved my curve. Small effect, but it proves nervous system state influences metabolism. When I protected sleep, breakfast spikes, softened sleep, is a metabolic intervention, not a luxury, and CGM makes that visible. Control room summary. The best stabilizers were pairing carbs with protein/fat and walking after meals. The worst triggers were stress and liquid carbs. There was no single villain. Food context mattered. portion, pairing movement, sleep, and stress decide whether a meal becomes a spike. Online charts make people chase flat lines, but healthy humans do not have perfectly flat glucose variability is normal physiology. Most of my data lived in a normal band. Bumps after meals are expected. What matters is repeated extreme swings and how you feel. If CGM makes you anxious, it can backfire. Obsession raises stress. Stress raises glucose, and now you are chasing your own shadow. Biofeedback works when you pick a lever, test it, and learn. It fails when you panic and change everything daily. Sensors can read off sometimes compression during sleep, hydration changes, and device error exists, so single spikes need skepticism, not drama. Sleeping on the sensor can cause false lows compression, reduces interstitial flow, another reason to avoid making big decisions from one overnight dip. Week 3 goes deeper. How stress, sleep, and routine shape glucose and cravings because metabolism is behavior plus biology. This week I stopped blaming food and test stress response because glucose is also fuel for survival, not just a response to carbs. Cortisol signals the liver to release glucose for action. It is useful in emergencies, but frequent activation can keep levels elevated unnecessarily. Here's the shocker. I did not eat, yet glucose rose because my body prepared for conflict like it was a sprint. When heart rate and glucose rise together without food, think stress hormones. Your CGM becomes a mirror for your nervous system. Coffee plus stress stacked affects more alertness, more glucose, so the food spike was actually a lifestyle stack I created. Breathing did not magically drop glucose, but reduced the rise. Small leverage matters when repeated daily across 30 days. A short walk helps stress and glucose simultaneously. Movement burns fuel and signals safety, lowering the need for emergency glucose release. Sleep fragmentation worsened next day tolerance. The same breakfast hit harder because insulin sensitivity suffers when sleep is shallow. Late screens created 2 problems, shorter sleep and higher stress arousal. So the CGM punished me the next morning. Many people handle carbs better earlier in the day. Circadian biology affects glucose tolerance, independent of calories and intentions. Moving the same meal earlier improved my curve modestly, no miracle, but consistent small wins compound over weeks. CGM made cravings visible. Bigger swings predicted stronger snacking later, so stability is not aesthetics. It is behavior control. A protein anchor at breakfast reduced swings and cravings because slower absorption and stronger satiety reduced the urge to chase quick sugar. Fiber was not glamorous, but it was reliable. Less peak, less swing, and better gut comfort. Boring interventions often win in biology. Ultra-processed snacks created fast peaks and quick hunger return. CGM revealed why one small snack turns into a second snack. Liquid calories were repeat offenders. Even when calories were similar, lack of chewing and fast absorption made the curve dramatic. Hydration can affect interstitial readings and perceived energy. You do not fix glucose with water, but you reduce confusing noise. A single spike does not equal disease. Diagnosis requires labs, and context. CGM is for learning patterns, not handing out labels. Do not compare your curve to influencers. Genetics, muscle mass, sleep, and stress change responses. Your baseline is your only fair reference. Metrics like time and range were built for diabetes care. For healthy users, focus on variability, triggers, and how you function. If CGM makes you fear normal foods, stop and reset. Mental health matters, and restrictive spirals can harm more than spikes. CGMs cost money and create data trails. Know the trade-offs. Biofeedback is useful, but you should understand what you are buying. Week 3 taught me the biggest lever was not food purity, it was sleep and stress control, because those change insulin sensitivity system-wide. Control room overlay proves it. Stress spikes look like food spikes unless you tag events. Logging turned confusion into actionable patterns. Now we build a playbook, 5 rules that stabilize glucose without living like a robot, and we will include the limits clearly. Resolution is not perfection. It is repeatable rules: pair carbs, walk after meals, protect sleep, manage stress, and respect timing. Rule 1: carbs rarely go alone. Protein or fat slows absorption and reduces peak. It is physiology, not willpower. Rule 2: walk 10 to 20 minutes after meals. Muscles pull glucose directly, shrinking the spike and often improving mood immediately. Rule 3: fiber and protein first, carbs last. It is an easy ritual that often lowers peak and reduces rebound hunger later. Rule 4: protect sleep like medication. Better sleep improves insulin sensitivity and quiets appetite hormones, making the entire day easier. Rule 5: add a stress buffer: breathing, short walk, or pause because a calm nervous system needs less emergency glucose. Timing strategy: place bigger carbs earlier or near activity. Late night carbs are not forbidden, but they often linger longer in many people. Liquid carbs are easy to overdo. If you love smoothies, add protein and fiber and treat them like meals, not drinks. Use a template: protein plus fiber, then carbs. This is not dieting. It is arranging fuel so your body processes it smoothly. Track weekly trends, not minute by minute drama. One weird day is noise, but repeated patterns are the signal worth changing. Limit 1: CGM is not a diagnostic tool here. If you are concerned, get fasting glucose and A1C with professional guidance. Limit 2: false highs and lows happen compression, sensor drift, and algorithm noise, so never panic from one reading alone. Limit 3: if tracking triggers anxiety or restrictive behavior, CGM may harm more than help. Choose well-being over data. Control room outcome: variability fell most when I slept well and walked. Food swaps helped, but lifestyle levers delivered the biggest stability. 30 days works because it repeats enough times for learning. You stop guessing and start predicting, which is the real power of biofeedback. When swings decreased, cravings softened because stable glucose and stable stress signals reduce the brain's demand for quick emergency calories. The goal is not becoming a food police officer. It is becoming a calm scientist, testing small changes and keeping what actually works. Analyze peak, duration, and context, sleep quality, stress tags, and movement. Those 3 explain most surprises better than ingredient lists. Your final deliverable is simple: top 3 triggers, top 3 stabilizers, and 1 routine you will keep because adherence beats theory. Now we land the plane: what CGM taught in 30 days, what it can't tell you, and how to use it safely. Takeaway: glucose is not just about carb stress. Sleep and movement steer the curve, and the curve predicts cravings more than weight does. Stress takeaway: a rise without food is real physiology. Treat the nervous system, not the pantry, when the timeline shows stress first. Sleep takeaway: better sleep improves insulin sensitivity and appetite hormones, making good choices feel easier because the body is not fighting you. Movement takeaway: short walks outperform many fancy hacks. They increase muscle glucose uptake and reduce post-meal peaks with almost no downside. Food takeaway: pairing and order change absorption speed. You can keep foods you enjoy and still improve curves by changing context. Limit summary: CGM lags and errs, does not diagnose, and can trigger obsession. Use it as education, not identity. If you have concerning symptoms, strong family history, or abnormal labs, see a clinician. CGM is not a substitute for a proper evaluation. True biofeedback is iterative. Pick one lever, retest, and keep the winner. Scattershot changes create noise, not insight. You can't intimidate physiology. The sensor does not care about motivation speeches. It only responds to what you repeat consistently. One sentence truth. Context beats demonizing food, sleep, stress, movement, portion, and pair and decide whether your curve behaves. If you try a CGM, run it like a study: 1 week baseline, 1 week food tests, 1 week lifestyle levers, 1 week consolidation. And remember, your glucose data is health data. Treat it respectfully, store it wisely, and do not outsource your self-worth to an app. If you wore a CGM, what would you test first, smoothie versus solid, walk versus couch, or sleep versus late scrolling? Tell me below. If this helped, like, subscribe, and share. We are building science movies that turn confusing body signals into practical daily decisions. Next, we test another everyday habit for 30 days: food, sleep, or stress, because your body's real story is written in repetition. Final reassurance: you do not need perfect glucose. You need stable habits, because stability reduces cravings, improves energy, and supports long-term health. Reports save, top triggers identified, top stabilizers proven, and limits acknowledged. Biofeedback works when you respect both the signal and the noise. As a clinician, I love curiosity, but never let a gadget replace common sense, proper labs, and a relationship with real medical care. Even cortisol does not want drama every day. Give it fewer emergency sleep. Walk, breathe, and your glucose curve usually follows the pace. Use data to learn, not to fear. The best health strategy is the one you can repeat calmly for 30 days and beyond. Trends over moments. Ignore the single weird spike. Respect the repeating pattern, and you'll make changes that actually hold. If you pick one lever tonight, pick the post-meal walk. It is simple, scalable, and improves both glucose and stress response. Food, stress, sleep, movement, four directors of your curve. When you steer them, glucose becomes feedback, not a scary scoreboard. Last reminder: CGM is a tool with lag and error. It informs experiments, but it cannot label you healthy or unhealthy. Comment your planned experiment: one change, 1 week, same meals, so we can compare learning strategies, not compare bodies. If this video helped you understand your body better, like, subscribe, and share, because the best biohack is understanding, not guessing. And no, you will not get a perfectly flat line. If you do, you are either fasting forever or your sensors lying to you. Calm physiology is good physiology. The more you reduce stress and improve sleep, the less your curve surprises you. Take care of the system, not just a number, because your nervous system, liver, muscle, and sleep architecture are the real glucose story. 30 days later. The lesson is simple. Use CGM as a mirror, not a judge, and let small, repeatable habits write the ending.